Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of YOMO. And you know what YOMO is? It's the year of ventricle learning. And today we're doing the final part five of our favorite book, The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. And I will let Chris introduce the reflection he has in mind for us today.
Yeah, so this one is probably one of the top 3 or 4 things that I learned from this book, but this is one of the thoughts that I try to incorporate into my life as much as I can. It's become a pretty big part of my life in general, along with the putting first things first and sharpening the saw and all those other things. But this one in particular as well.
All of them are equally important in my
I know
opinion.
it's hard. It's so hard to pick. That's why we did 5 for this one. So,
Yes.
But without further ado, we'll kind of get into it here. The reflection title for this one is the space between stimulus and response is your freedom to choose. And those words, the reflection is really kind of unpacking those words. I remember actually when I first read this book, one of the other phrases, I guess, if you will, that always stuck out to me that the author used was we're responsible. And he broke it down by saying, you're responsible, so you're able to respond. And his definition of responsible was, and it's pretty empowering to think, even though we don't really control a lot of the stimulus or even your emotions, honestly. I mean, you think about a lot of the things that your environment, the stuff that happens to you. I mean, obviously you have no control over any of that stuff. And honestly, you really don't even have any control over your emotions either. I mean, that's your elephant at work and that's your natural evolution. Your emotions come and, that's actually a good thing. I don't have any concerns about emotions coming because that means we're human and that's pretty cool. We do have the ability to choose not the environment, not your emotions, but once you've received both of those stimuluses, there's this window of time where you can decide what you want to do going forward, how you want to interpret those, understand and comprehend and use your thinking slow brain or your writer to process the emotions and to process the stimulus to decide and make it determine what is that next step you're going to take. For an instance, like I wrote in this reflection, when we were first around finding out about my daughter on the Thursday, she was born on a Sunday at 22 weeks old. Thursday beforehand, we actually had a regular routine ultrasound that we went to and the doctor was fine. Everything was fine. We were actually, this is before the pandemic happened, and we were going to Hawaii at the end of that month. So this was like March the 13th or the 12th when we went. We had planned on a trip for spring break for our anniversary, which is always on March 24th. So only like a week away. I remember the doctor telling my wife it was her first pregnancy and she was worried about sushi and all this other stuff, right? And the doctor was like, look, the sushi out in Hawaii is super fresh and it's fine. She was like, the sushi is super fresh, no need to worry about it. And then, she actually literally said to us, you don't need to worry about the coronavirus thing. It's not a big deal, because this was literally before like any of this stuff started happening. It was just kind of national consciousness at that point in time. Fast forward 3 days later and we find ourselves in the emergency room and my wife's going into preterm labor and our daughter's there. So that's a perfect example of you can't control your environment. You can't control what happens to you. You can't control what's going on in this world. And obviously getting thrown into that situation, a whole lot of range of emotions bubbled up. It's hard for me to even describe sometimes. I wrote it down in a book if you wanted to check that out. But once again, you can't control any of that stuff. But what you can control is what you then, when you had some time to sit back and think about and process, like, what are we going to do going forward? That was on me. That was my decision. That was something that my wife and I made, and taking some ownership of the situation, how we wanted to be as parents, how we wanted to live our lives, things that we talked about with previous reflections from the 7 habits of how we wanted to try to stay balanced and be there for our daughter and support her every way that we can, physically, mentally, emotionally, and to try to keep ourselves under control and help each other through the whole process. So a lot of these were situations where it always makes me think about, that space between stimulus and response is your freedom to choose. I mean, it is literally, how do you, that is what we have. That's all that we have, right? At that point in time. And that's the only option that we have going forward. So for me, the way that I decide on what to do, and I know that you and I use this framework as well when we're deciding what to do for things like Clovey and for things that we want to do for activities and things like that, like the Year of Magical Learning. We look at our values as a Clovey group. For me personally, I look at my values whenever I'm making a decision these days for anything going forward. And in that space and that between the stimulus and response, that's the framework that I use to determine, what do I do going forward? And I'm always filtering it back through the same filter every single time of my values. Does this align? Does this make sense? Is this how I want to live my life when I'm 90 years old and I'm looking back at my life? Is this the type of decision that I'm not going to regret? Is this the type of, framework and that's how I filter everything. And that's how I make my decisions going forward. And that is, a huge change between how I used to live my life and how I live my life today. That really was spurred on and stimulated through this book. I mean, he's right. Like, we have the ability to respond, and it's up to you how you want to do that. So for me, and I know for yourself and for what we're trying to build going forward, I mean, we want to use our values in that space to determine our path forward and what we do. So that's the reflection in a nutshell. I'll pause there and love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, and I think you're so right about the only thing we can control is our action, our response. We can't control anything in your environment. We can't control our emotion. We can't control anything that is just not within our control. So for me, I think that's the only thing you would control, but it's also give us the ability to become the gatekeeper of what can influence us, what can make us do things. And so having that ability and having, in a way, you can say, well, that's your superpower. Whether that's something that you use or you don't use, it's still up to you, but that's your superpower. Things can come bombarding at you, but you say, well, these doesn't matter to me, right? So go back to what we talked about yesterday. We have the 4 quadrant. And when thing comes to you, you take it and you say, well, this is a piece of data that I have. Is it important? Do I want to, is it important? Is it urgent? Do I want to use it? Do I want to respond to it? If a text comes in, that's a stimuli. I can decide how, when I want to respond or not respond at all. Not responding is still respond as well. And to me, that's the only way for us to keep ourselves aligned with what we want, aligned with our core values, aligned with who we are as that specific human being, the genetic makeup that make us who we are. We'll go back to what we're saying is a beaver must dam, right? If you are born, if you're made into a beaver, right? You are going to want to dam. If you're made into a wolf, you're not going to want to build a dam. So that's the thing is, that is the only, I guess, the gate. Keeper.
Yeah.
That allows you to be who you are. And that is the most crucial thing. That's almost a choke point. And if you allow that to go unused, you basically go on autopilot. You're always basically being, I guess, lift or let the flow of the environment, let the flow of the stimuli takes you where it goes. So you have no control of where you want to be or how you want to be, because you never use the single thing you can control to allow you to navigate. It's almost like a rudder.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Because essentially the things always can come on you. So the waves can come on you. It's up to you to diverge the information or to take it, either this is not going to affect me, or this is not important to me, or this is something that I like to do. Well, you have that ability to make a choice when it comes there. We have the one thing, right? And only one thing. I can't think of anything that we can control.
There's 2 things you can control. You can control what you care about, and then you can control your response to a stimulus.
No, we'll challenge that.
You're gonna say
the thing is, I am a beaver. I'm a beaver. I want to care about snow.
I mean, I know what you're saying.
I want to care about the going and dig a hole.
Luckily, we're not beavers. I mean, I love beavers, but I think humans have a little bit more flexibility in terms
human
of
has a more complex
a range of abilities.
Yes, but because you have the ability to override the primal instincts of your animal portion. But at the same time, you're not being optimized because you're overriding some part of your body that longs to be in the water or longs to be caring about trees or mushroom, fish or octopus, or whatever it is you want, right? You're overriding, you're suppressing your natural nature. You're suppressing it. So you have the ability, but you're suppressing it. So that's what I'm saying. Yes, you could, but talking about like, hey, taking all the veils off, you essentially say, well, you really don't have a choice, because if you're made into a writer, you say, well, I don't want to be a writer. That's fine. But it's still going to say, hey, it's going to say, hey, I should be a writer, even though there's pros and cons in being a writer. But at my end of my day on earth, when I'm about to leave life, I say, well, I regret not trying it. So to me, you're suppressing something that you're supposed to do.
No, I agree. And that's where the whole values, I think conversation shifts it a little bit, because values are abstract in general. You're talking about very concrete things of this is what I do kind of thing. So if you filter it through values, then you can always, there's an infinite number of paths that you can take of the activity that you want to do, is all that I'm saying. Is like, I guess you
it's
can
more
technically,
complex than
right,
we can describing it, but
right,
it is already complex enough, so we're trying to
right.
simplify as much as we can. It's more much more complex than we are making it out to be, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And the reason why we do that is because it's already complex to understand. So to take it at face value, it's going to be so much daunting for us and for our audience to figure out what the hell are we talking about.
Right. Well, so, but this is an important point to anchor down on. If you're, in your analogy, if you're a beaver and you must dam kind of thing, and that's the activity that you must do, you don't really have a choice. Like, so the space between stimulus and response, you don't really have a choice. Because a beaver must dam, right? Like, so what I'm arguing is, in that space between stimulus and response, the values framework system gives you an infinite number of choices of what you can do, but it narrows it down to, does it reflect back to this category? So you do have freedom to choose how you express that value with the next activity.
So my analogy would be, I'm a beaver. I have to dam, but I can choose how I can dam that thing, right? So I'm not going to say, hey, I'm a beaver, I'm going to swim in the Arctic and I want to be like a seal. I just can't do that. I'm not made for it. But inside of my realm of the things that I have my calling for, I can decide how I can do that, whether that's this tree, this river, or wherever, right? I can decide that. And what kind of beaver do I want? I want to be a busy beaver. I want to be, the young engineer beaver or whatever. I have the ability to choose that response, but it's still within the building a dam.
Right, towards your purpose. Yes, it always is towards your purpose, or at least it should be.
For whatever reason, in my head, when we are born, right, when you were being created, we came to life,
right,
we basically have this imbalance, and we need to find the other counterbalance to make sure we align on a balanced level. That's how I think about it. So I gotta find that missing piece that gotta counterbalance me on a tippity scale or whatever. That's how I think. I don't know if that's even makes sense, but
no, it totally does. Actually, I just wrote a reflection about this 2 days ago. So I finished the Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time book over the weekend, and like so far over my head, right? I mean, it was intense. I literally probably retained 3% of the knowledge of that guy. I mean, talk about the difference between knowing and understanding. Like, that guy understands what he's talking about. Like, I don't know how he does, but he does. I learned some stuff, but I didn't get any of it. One of the things that I did get from the book that I do understand is one of the fundamental laws of the universe he was talking about is the universe is always expanding at this point in time and in motion. And whether it will either be expanding or contracting, but it will always be in motion. One of the things that he started talking about, if we're to believe the Big Bang and however the universe started or whatever it may be, the universe started off in an ordered state, right? And as it's expanding, it moves to more of a disordered state. And because of that movement to a disordered state, that's built the space where life can coexist and come out of that disordered state. But this is the funny thing that as it relates back to what you're saying, we have this weird desire as humans to take a disordered state, like emotions or stimulus that's coming from all over the place, and bring it back into an ordered state for whatever reason.
Compel to go against. Yeah, exactly.
And it's kind of fascinating because you're right. We're taking in this whole entire simulation that we're talking about of stimulus and environment and response, we're taking disorder and chaos and emotions. There's no rhyme or reason why they're coming up or why they're happening. It's all totally random. And then we're filtering it all back down into something of order and using this framework of values and your purpose to decide a path forward that seems to be balanced and in alignment with where you're going. But it's really just this never-ending battle between turning disorder into order. Does that help to describe a little bit about what you were trying to say? I guess I was literally thinking about this the other day, so hopefully I said that
right. So there's always, for us, it's always that, like I said, we are compelled to do one thing or another. Like we were saying back in our previous episode, we're talking about we are composers, right? We are builders of things, and we are compelled to build. We are compelled to put things and organize things. We are compelled to categorize things. That's what we do. For whatever reason, we are doing that, and we are compelled to that. And we can't really say, well, I don't want to. Because if you say you don't want to and you resist it, your body
just
and
disorder.
your mind is
like
going, just because whether or not having an organize this or organize that or category this and all that. I don't think it matters like in the ultimate sense, but it gives us a sense of like tranquility for whatever reason it does, right? Versus, hey,
it's just
if this
clarity.
is a
Yeah.
mess, I can't take it, I can't lift it
Right.
like this no more, right?
Right.
Have you hear people saying that? What's the difference if it's order or disorder? In the ultimate sense, what does it matter if it's order or not? But we cannot live in a place where it's not order, right?
Right.
I'm looking at your background, like your backdrop, right? You got the shelves, you got a guitar, you
Right.
got pictures. It's all
Right.
organized and it's all like aligned at some level. And for
Right.
us,
Well, I
we
mean,
are,
okay, that's a great point. So, like, these are things that this is my father's office. I'm at my parents' house right now because our AC went out, right? These
Mhm.
are all things that are important to him. I know when he looks at this stuff in his office every single day, that this gives him some sort of sense of balance and harmony and order and consistency in his life because he's seen stuff like the guitars and the keyboard and the sports paraphernalia and the golf
Mhm.
balls that are all on the shelf over there and
Right.
the things that that he loves to do is in this room, and it gives you that sense of peace. Like, you're right, like there could just be shit thrown all over the place in here if you wanted to. Like, there's
But
no
it's still
rhyme.
there. But why does
Right.
it have to have all the golf balls lined up in a nicely boxed, right? It just
Ah,
looks so nice, right?
it does,
Even
yeah.
for me, I mean, I'm not a golfer and I never golfed before because I don't have that privilege. But
Right.
it's still, it looks nice to have that like golf case with a bunch of golf ball aligned in perfect row. It just makes you feel great. So for whatever reason, we need to be harmonized with something. I don't know what that is, but
I don't either.
we are forced to do it. So that's what I'm saying is we are built using some kind of a genetic makeup, whatever, and we are compelled to do the things that we are supposed to do. And so if you in life find those things that you need to do and go do them, you will have a life that you feel it is
Purpose,
the
life of purpose.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, like, that's
You feel like you
it
belong.
matters. Yeah, I mean,
You
it
feel like you
matters.
belong, and you're not, because the thing is, if you don't belong, the other feeling you have is lost. That's the
Yep.
feeling that I get when I'm not doing things I'm supposed to
But
do.
here's the fun part about the idea of being lost, right? Like, because the universe is lost, right? Like, everything around you is in disorder and moving toward more disorder. If we're to believe, that the universe is expanding and all that other stuff, right? Like, this is what I find so fascinating personally is, like, the universe is kind of lost, and just through sheer randomness it finds its way through the jungle. I don't know how it does it, and honestly, like, I don't know that we even care, but I find it so fascinating that we are the exact opposite of that. I mean, like, literally we have this innate drive to be the exact opposite of going with the flow, because going with
it's
the
it's
flow,
it's that
you
it's
know
that counterbalance I'm talking about, because I guess the word harmony has to do with the opposites. You have to balance it out
yeah,
in
it's
one way.
polarity, right?
So you can't always be in the same extremities as everything else because you get tip the scale.
Well,
So
this is more interesting now, because now that we're bringing it down this road, it reminds me of, I don't know if we've done this reflection yet, but I remember one of the reflections I wrote was like, always do the exact opposite. I know we talked about this before in the past. I can't remember what the
yeah, I think
book.
we talked about and we did it in an earlier episode.
So I can't remember what the episode was. I'll have to go back and look it up, but I think that holds true, because it's exactly what we're talking about at this point in time. You need a counterbalance to be able to bring harmony, right? If everybody's going one way, somebody needs to bring the circle back.
Yeah, the earth's gonna fall off the face
Right.
of the universe.
Exactly. I mean, it'll just keep expanding to disorder and disarray. The further and
Right.
further you keep going in one direction and only one direction. Maybe, but I think taking it back to, like, the space between stimulus and response is your freedom to choose. It, like, that, the freedom to choose order is honestly what we should say, because that's what this is really about. Like, this is about order. This is about bringing harmony and order to your life. For whatever reason we're compelled, but it's probably the most powerful thing that we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think this power of the stimulant, the freedom to choose your response can make or break your life. In the past, when somebody does something to me, or when somebody say, "Hey, I don't like this, or I don't like what you did," whatever, because I'm emotional and we are emotional, we always react to the things to respond. React means it's just bouncing off whatever, and we always will. For every action, there's a reaction, and so
Yeah.
that basically derail your life. But if you use the power that you have to choose how you deal with response, people do not affect me. So I have been able to keep my peace of mind, and I have been able to use it as a leverage to be more optimal in how I make my decisions,
I
right?
mean,
Because my decision is going to be what is the best for me versus how do I react in this moment in time. And
I
that makes me a whole different level of a person than I was before. And to me, this power that you have your freedom to the freedom to choose, it is very, very important as a human person. Because for one, right, you are able to live who you are, and also you are able to be able to not, because if I were to react to what that person say, he may not intend to whatever I interpret it as a maybe an insult or whatever, right? And I create that reaction. That reaction in turn make him react, and it spiral into out of control. And so not only is it good for me, but it's also good for the person that he just happened to think about something and he may misspoke or I may misheard or whatever. And it creates into this chaos of a community that doesn't need to be there.
I mean, it makes me think about what we were talking last night, with what's going on with my life right now. It's nothing like crazy, but for all intents and purposes, it's very easy for me to say no to this conversation tonight, last night, and many other nights throughout the past couple of years. And I'm sure the same thing is on your end as well. You were running late tonight for certain things that are going on, and I'm sure you have to make dinner or whatever, your kids. Like, I mean, we all have all these things that are going on. Like, I think of the exact scenario that I'm in right now. Like, I still don't feel good because of COVID. This is my past few weeks. I'm recovering from COVID. The AC is out of my house. I'm in a new location. I'm in a different office space. I'm sleeping in a different bed. All these different stimuluses and responses. We don't have any food here. We got to run back home. The dog's beating on the door because she's all pissed off about where she is. And I feel weird about talking loudly because my mom and my dad are out there and they're probably like, what the hell is Chris doing in there? Like, why is this even happening? It's 6:45 at night. She's sitting down for dinner or something along those lines,
Yes.
And I think about all these dynamics that are going on, and it would be so easy for me to just go, you know what? I'm just going to go with the flow. Like, this is what it's going on. This is what it is. This is the circumstances I've been dealt. But like, this is the power of the freedom to choose in that space between that stimulus and response. I'm choosing to wake up and struggle to write my reflection this morning because I was groggy from not getting a great night's sleep because I'm in a different bed, but still, fighting through it, figuring out, because this is important to me to write that reflection, to do my reading, to do my writing, to get a workout in this morning, to then get to work and still be able to do my normal functionality and do my monthly challenge at some point in time, do my Wim Hof stuff in the middle of the day, and find time to be able to do that stuff, and then find time to go do these things. Like, because it could so easily, like, I mean, it is, like you said, it's a cascading. There's a million different universes that you and I have been connected into. And there's a million different ways that we've stopped doing this after 3 weeks or a month or a couple days or maybe 4 or 5 months, or maybe we're never even talking ever again. And we've all gone our different paths. But it's when these situations come up, we choose time and time again how I want to respond and say, this is what's important to me because this aligns my purpose. This aligns to my values. This makes me feel like I'm living a purpose-driven life, and it makes the decision easy. And I feel like a better human being. I'm better to be around. Do I love what's going on? Of course not. But at the same time, I'm okay.
You can't control your environment, but that's the strength that you have, is you are very versatile. Right. Because, you think about having COVID, your AC broke and you have to go to your parents' house and do all these things. I mean, it's like, you didn't want that to happen, but it happened. But
I didn't control any of that.
You're able to handle it because you're versatile, because you have the ability to choose, and you choose what you want to do, right? But also another sense is like, let's say somebody comes and asks your parent, hey, what is Chris like? Well, I don't know. What is Chris like? If Chris doesn't do anything out of the ordinary, how would they be able to tell, hey, Chris is this? Well, Chris, he goes into my room. And so there's a story, there's a memory that people can tell about you because you stands out, right?
That's such a good point. My grandmother, for my birthday last year, she got me this little tiny like piece of paper that she printed off the internet. That she created. It was a little tiny like logo that she created. It was this little tiny lion with a little tiny imagine underneath it. She put it in this tiny little frame, and that was her gift to me. And honestly, it was one of the coolest gifts that I've ever gotten in my life because she obviously understands what's important to me, and she understands what those ideas mean to me. Being able to be creative and to do these things and to have these kind of conversations and to like, I mean, that's when to your exact point, like, if you don't do these things, like nobody knows what's
nobody
important
knows
to
your
you.
value because you're saying like, okay, my value is to endure. My value is to, have my core values and living for two, right? And you tell people that, but then when you go to your parents' house and there's, why are you at 6:45 be on a call with somebody? Well,
Right.
he says what he does and he does what he say. He is true to his word, right? People remembers you because
Right.
you did what you wanted to do and you told them how you want to live. And that is something that people remember. If you were say, well, yeah, you're right, it's too much, I won't do it. Well, and then somebody asks your parents or ask your wife, what is Chris like? Well, they won't remember because you act like everybody else.
Right.
And you act like everybody
Right.
else, you basically buried in the noise, and there's nothing to tell about what is Chris like. No one know
Right.
what Chris is like, right? But if you do what you say you would do, and you do the things that people don't expect, like, hey, you're at 6:45 at your parents' house, the AC broke, you had COVID, you everything is bombarded at you, right? And it's ramming to your door, and you're able to cool and collectively continue on with your life in the way that you want to. How cool. And people know that and people remember that. But
Right.
if you say I succumb to these and I do whatever people expect me to do, when they ask your parent, what is Chris like? Well, I don't know. I mean, he's like everybody else. So, you know what I mean?
Right.
Did you think
Yeah,
about
no,
it?
I think it matters. At least it matters to me and it matters to you. I think most people would say that that matters. We've talked about this so many different times, but this is one of the fundamental problems. People don't even know who they want to be. You can't have other people know what you're like until you know what you're like. That's one of the most fundamental problems of this whole conversation. You got to start with yourself. And that's like literally the 7 habits. The first 3 habits are about, personal discipline and personal understanding and personal mastery, I guess, if you will, of yourself, of being proactive, of putting first things first, of living the life and making decisions, that being responsible for what you do and for how you behave, how you funnel all this stuff into whatever actions that you do, how you turn disorder into order, like that's like that's who you are, and if you don't know how to turn all the chaos in your life into what framework to use to turn it into order, then start there. I mean, that's number one place to start, and it's pretty simple activity of just like, what do you want to do that brings you joy every single day? Like, that's not a hard question in theory. Sadly, for a lot of people that it is. So start there. And then,
but
and
that's why that's why we're doing this thing, so we can make more people aware of this.
Right. Exactly. I mean, this is something we want to share with other people, and that's why we want to build a community of other people that want to live life this way, and that we can all understand. Hey, this is true. This is Snow. This is Blake. This is Sarah. This is Amanda. These are all the people. Like, and this is what you're going to expect from them. And if there's overlapping connections of, hey, I know Snow likes to do that, and True likes to do that. Hey, if we just connect those 2 dots together, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, then you got a whole ecosystem beginning to develop. The puzzle is coming together, and it's a very strong connected puzzle because we know who they are and what they want to do and how they want to live their life, and you can do it together. So I think that sums up my thoughts on this one. Any other final thoughts for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that people overlook in terms of the ability for them to make their life much, much easier, is utilize this power that the only power that you have.
To be you.
Right. Right, to be you, and to have a life that is something that you won't regret.
Yeah. I mean, and regrets are okay too, because regrets can help inform your values as well.
When it's too late.
Right. Well, we have a whole book to talk about the power of regret coming up, reflection. So that'll be a fun debate, but regret is powerful either way, good or bad, I guess, whether it's there or not. Well, awesome. Great conversation as always. A question we can leave with everybody is, what do you fall back on in moments of decisions to help guide your path forward? So hopefully it's values. Hopefully it's falling back on yourself and your purpose and your mission. But if it's not, I'd love to hear what you do, because we are always open to learning. We don't know shit. This is just what we do. I appreciate the comments, and we will see you all in the next conversation. That wraps up the 7 habits. I feel like we've been talking about this one for
this is the final one for this book. We may do more in the future because this book is packed with a lot of concept that a lot of people overlook just because, it's simple, but not so simple.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Drew? I'll challenge you. I'll do one of our challenges here. I think I'm tapped out of ones that I want to write about with the 7 habits, but if there's something that you really want to write about, share it, and we'll post a blog post about it, and we'll do a special True led.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see you next time.